The moment you quit, you're out of the game. As long as you stay in the game, you never know. You might, make a half court shot or throw the Hail Mary and it lands in the end zone. And so, but if you quit, you're never going to know if any of those long shots are going to work out. You have to have an ego to think that I'm going to be in the 10% that succeeds and I'm not going to be in the 90% that fails. I mean, if you knew you were going to be in the 90% that failed, you'd never start. The cost of a wrong hire is anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times the annual salary of that person.
By the end of this episode, you'll know what marketing actually works when you're starting from nothing, the moves that should come and in what order before you spend a cent on paid ads, even if it's just you with no team and not much in the way of budget. My guest is Alex Smereczniak, who built his first business out of a dorm room and sold it for 10 times what he paid for it, and then did it again. So we're going to talk about how Alex did that with marketing that cost him really not much at all or nothing, and how he got to where he is today. So welcome, Alex.
Jo, thanks for having me, and thanks for the wonderful intro. I love the angle too on how do you go from zero to something, and so excited to dig into that today and hopefully share some nuggets along the way.
Yeah, so you bought a laundry business out of your dorm room at 21 and, as I said, sold it for 10 times what you paid for. So forgetting the backstory for a second, what was the very first thing you did to get customers when you had no money?
Yeah, so as college kids, we looked for, where are our customers going to be and when, and how do we get the most, density of those individuals in one place for the lowest cost, to us. And for us, that was, freshman orientation week. So the buyer is really the parent in that situation. It was a college laundry and dry cleaning delivery business, but the customer, even though it was students we were serving, were their parents. They were the ones ultimately paying for it. And so when can we get in front of the parents? And the best time was orientation, week when freshmen are coming in for the first time. And so we'd set up a booth on the lawn, and we were like the midnight infomercial guys, like, step right up. We have the best premier laundry service. You don't want your son or daughter, slaving away in the basement of the dorm while they should be studying or meeting people. And, we provide a solution for that. So we had all these little kind of silly one-liners, and the parents would come up and they thought it was amazing. And, in their head, they were already mentally spending all this money, books, tuition, meal plans, et cetera. And so what was another service that, freed their children up from, a chore every week so they can go focus on enjoying college and studying and meeting people, et cetera. So for that business, we just got out in front of the customer where they were and got to talk to hundreds of parents over a 2-day period for free.
That's awesome. Catching them when they're already in the spend money mode, and also realizing who your actual customer is. It's not the kid.
Not the kid.
Yeah. So you also said that you've sold door to door. How did you go about that? What did you actually say that would were you talking to students in that case that would make them sign up? Or?
Yeah, we would try that too. After the parents had gone, we'd go pass information around to different college kids about here's how you can sign up, or here's like a coupon of sorts that you can share with your parents. We were still always kind of had the parent in mind because they were the ones ultimately, again, paying for the service. And so we'd kind of almost feed them the script of what they should say to their parents to get them to sign up. Like, Mom, Dad, my hallmates, are using this. I see how, easier or better their college experience is. Would you guys be willing to try this service out for a semester to see if it works out well for me or not? And so we would just kind of go door to door and put stuff under people's, flyers, basically under people's doors if they didn't answer. And it was kind of our second wave or our second push. And again, it's free. It was our time, but outside of that, we didn't have to pay Facebook ads or big sponsorships or anything like that. It was just get in front of people.
Was there anything that you didn't expect to work, but it surprised you because it worked out really well at that period for marketing?
So I think the booth during orientation, it made sense to us, but at the same time, we didn't expect it to work as well as it did. I mean, parents were coming through. It's kind of like cattle almost. They're being corralled to these different stages, like get your meal plan, get your books, get your parking pass, get all this stuff. And then here we are with our booth and like, oh, here's the laundry thing. And so in a lot of cases, I think parents thought like, oh, this is just another step in the process of all the things we need to do today. Let's go ahead and sign up. And so we did a couple $100,000 in revenue in, like a 3 or 4 day period, which was way more than we anticipated for a small college laundry business.
That's awesome. I'm reminded of someone who had an app and they were getting college students to sign up, and they said, if you download this app, we'll give you a cookie. Managed to get a heap of downloads. I actually wish I could remember which one it was, but clever. So at 2U Laundry, you were up against companies that had raised tens of millions of dollars. You had almost nothing. So what did your first marketing dollars go on?
Yeah, so that was our second iteration. The first college business we went on to sell. I then went and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to do consulting at Ernst Young for a year and a half. And I learned a lot, but I hated the work. I was not as fulfilled. And so I started another laundry business called 2U Laundry. And this time it was more of a venture-backed, how do we build a national brand, take what we learned in college and do it on the national stage, build a huge company. And at first, though, we weren't venture backable. We weren't attractive to investors. We were a bunch of kids that didn't really know what they were doing. We were 22 at the time, and they wanted to see traction. And so we ourselves don't have a ton of money to put into the business. We're not in a place to raise money, and nor have we ever done that before, know how to do that. And so same playbook we did in college. How do we get in front of as many customers as possible for relatively cheap? And so we figured apartments, very dense, lots of customers, busy professionals. Let's go to the apartment, property managers and say, we'll host a free beer and pizza night for your residents, but just give us a booth in the basement or like the main lobby of the building, and we'll give some free beer and pizza, and then we will also give them their first bag of laundry free. So this is like a perk that's paid for by us. And our thought was if we get them hooked on one try, they'll come back for more and, use dry cleaning and laundry. And so we would have all these apartment events almost every night of the week where we'd go and have different, community events, and we'd get in front of a ton of people all at once. And that worked really well. And then we drove Uber to not eat into our savings very much. So we would wake up at 6 a.m, drive Uber for 2 or 3 hours, and then work on the startup in the laundry business all day, and then drive Uber again at night. And most of the customers we were getting were bankers, lawyers, people that were coming to and from, the center city. And those are the types of people that need dry cleaning. And so that was accidental, but people would inevitably ask, why are you driving Uber? What are you doing? Oh, we're starting this business. Let me tell you about it. Oh, do you have a card? Do you have a coupon card or anything? And so we give out coupon cards to all of our Uber passengers. And so that was like a small, fun way. And then the last but most effective way was using Facebook forums, and like Nextdoor is one of them, where it's like if you live in a certain zip code, you have access to that zip code's neighborhood community. Well, so we found a way to infiltrate all these neighborhood communities and these Facebook groups with fake Facebook profiles. So like we create fake mom accounts and we join these groups, and then we'd say, hey ladies, hey moms, mom hack of the year, check out 2U Laundry. It's the service that gives you back 20 hours a month of your time. You should check it out. Here's my referral code. And we'd create a fake referral code that worked. But that got us so many customers. And again, we didn't have to pay anything other than the referral code or the referral amount that we did.
I'm also laughing at, the thought of a young guy working in corporate and he's mind-numbingly bored. So what does he do? He starts a laundry. Okay. That's hilarious. Cody Sanchez would be proud, the boring business. Well done.
Oh, yeah. That means in the places you least expect it. Yeah,
that's really funny. You skipped building an app and you used SMS. Simple web form. Your customers preferred it, which I really like. It's, zigging another zag or the other way around. Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so we at first, we wanted to do everything lean, and truly that like lean methodology, build an MVP, a minimum viable product. And it's funny, a lot of things that we did early on, I look back on and think of all these like academic teachings on entrepreneurship. Like, they'd be so proud of us because none of us were formally trained in entrepreneurship. We just had constraints, and we thought, what do people really care about? They want their laundry done here. Whether we text them or send them a push notification in an app isn't really going to matter to them as long as their clothes get picked up on time and returned when we said they're going to be returned, and cleaned the way they wanted them to be cleaned. And that's what we have to get really good at. And so when we came to the crossroads of, well, everyone's got an app, Uber's got an app, and food delivery's got an app, and app, we're like, well, maybe we can just send texts, and it sounds, it feels way more personalized. And I think customers are very forgiving. They want to be a part of that early journey and support these young guys, especially at the time. Like we were, we looked like college kids because we basically still were. We weren't that far out of, college. And so I think a lot of customers really wanted to like, all right, these young people are trying to be entrepreneurial and the service is something that I need and I want anyway. And, so I'll give them good feedback and I'll text them. And so we texted, we used SMS for years before we ever built an app. We eventually built an app and I think we always knew we were going to, but out of the gate, you don't need to spend $100,000 to build an app when you can just send texts for pennies, and get the same learning that you need to see, is this business even viable? And to me, an app is a champagne problem, is what I call them. Is like you're so big and you have enough money and traction at that point that you can afford to go do something as luxurious as build an app.
I think it's really important. I'm constantly telling people don't spend money on ads until you've proven your offer and you know what it is you're selling and why people are buying it and who those people are, so that's your targeting in a bottle then once you've got that sorted out. So, obviously you did that really well. There was a stretch, the first 10 months of 2U Laundry, where you slept on the floor and lived on noodles, 18-hour days. What was the lowest moment? What specifically, what stopped you quitting?
I think each other. The guys that I started with, I've known since third grade for the most part, and that was after failing with other groups of people that we had too many of the same skill sets. So I tried actually starting this with guys that I worked with in consulting. But as you can imagine, you now have 2 or 3 consultants that have the same types of skills trying to do the same thing. And it's just, that's where you start to butt heads and, people are stepping on toes because you have too many of the same skills versus complementary skills. And so with Dan, my co-founder, I've known forever, deep level of trust, a lot of shared values. But he was really good at sales and marketing, and my background is more finance and operations, and so we complemented each other. And because we were friends, we all lived together at first. So we had 5 guys living on a 3-bedroom, in a 3-bedroom apartment. So we had mattresses on the floor. So Dan and I slept next to each other, worked all day together, and were 24/7 around each other. And that's honestly what kept us going, not what broke it apart, because anytime one of us wanted to quit, the other one would lift them back up and be like, we got this. This is what we committed to. Let's at least give it 12 months. We have enough cash or runway to do that. Let's just keep chipping away. And then 2 weeks later, the other one would flip. I can't believe we're doing this. I can't, let's go get jobs. This sucks. And the other one would pick them back up. So there wasn't one specific moment, but it was just a constant, lifting, being good partners and challenging each other and supporting each other and lifting each other back up when we were down.
I've heard you called it cockroach mode.
Yeah. You have to me, it's all perseverance. I've heard a number of very successful entrepreneurs say, like, the moment you quit, you're out of the game. As long as you stay in the game, you never know. You might, make a half court shot or throw the Hail Mary and it lands in the end zone. And so, but if you quit, you're never going to know if any of those long shots are going to work out. And so cockroaches are the most resilient creatures on earth. There's a nuclear bomb, they're still going to be crawling around. And I think entrepreneurs have to be the same way. You got to stay in the game, stay around the hoop, and be a cockroach and survive.
Awesome. Going to have cockroach posters on the wall. So you studied other companies' failures by phoning their founders directly. I love this. It's just a ballsy move. One told you flat out that point-to-point delivery doesn't work. So you're a small operator with no network. How do you get to the truth before you're sort of wasting time figuring things out?
Yeah, I think as I reflect back on it, I think we were just naive, and I'd now keep some of that naivety on purpose, where if I don't know something, I want to go ask people about it. And even if that's a competitor or, a competitor's supplier or something, just, you'd be surprised how willing people are to share information and advice and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so early on, we quickly knew what we didn't know, and we would just go seek out people that were experts in it and would hound them until they'd give us 30 minutes of their time. And then those 30 minutes were wildly helpful. It probably saved, tons of, hours or mistakes or money that we could have gone and figured it out on our own eventually. But a 30-minute conversation could have saved us 6 months or 60 grand or, losing a big customer because they've already had those hard lessons for us. So why go repeat them if they're willing to give you the roadmap or the blueprint on how to navigate around some of those things?
How did you approach them? You can't really ring them up and say, I want to pick your brains because I'm going to compete with you.
Yeah, and so some cases it was companies that had failed already, and so they were more than happy to say, "Hey, I want to see someone succeed at this." So failed competitors are great because they've really seen it all, and now you know at least what didn't work for them. You shouldn't go try the exact same playbook. So if we had two strategies, if we're going to do static or point-to-point delivery, let's go talk to the point-to-point delivery companies that failed, and they'll tell us, "Oh, our cost of delivery because we did that was 80%, which doesn't work. You need to be under 50 for this to work." Or, you start to get some of those insights. For the ones that were still in play, we'd have to be a little sneakier. And this is where you have to decide for yourself, do you want to operate in the black and the white or the gray? And I sometimes am a little bit more in the gray. I don't want to do anything unethically wrong, but I will also, as long as the intent is good and you're not maliciously doing things, that's where my line is. And so with existing competitors, we would have other investors call them up and ask them how they're doing and how things are going, which I know happens to me all the time too. I get called up and you can tell people are fishing for information. And so we'd do things like that where we'd have an investor reach out, and sometimes me and competitors became friends, and we would just talk to each other and be like, we tried this, it worked, it didn't work. And now you have to be a good read of character and people and figure out, are they being truthful about what they've tried and is working or and not working, or are they being disingenuous? So it's a little harder of a game when you're talking directly to a competitor.
Way through the BS. So if
yes.
you treat failure as tuition, what would you say is the most expensive lesson you've had, and what did it teach you?
Yeah, I think hiring the wrong people it's such an expensive decision, because you spend all this time interviewing, recruiting, and then training them, and then you're a few months in, and a lot of people get this kind of like sunk cost fallacy. We're like, oh, well, they've already here. We might as well see how. Let's give them another 2 months. Let's give them another 2 months. Let's give them another 2 months. And that whole time, not only are you paying that person a salary, but you might also be negatively impacting the business. And now when you finally do decide to move on from that person, you have to start that whole process of recruiting and finding and training all over again. So in reality, I think a wrong hire not only costs the 6 months of their salary, but probably another 6 months of losing productivity in the person, and maybe even another 3 months of them working on the wrong things and not producing the results. So, to me, the cost of a wrong hire is anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times the annual salary of that person. And so you have to get people right, and learning how to be a judge of character and right fit for the role, and all the skills that go into recruiting and onboarding and interviewing I think is so critical, and the most expensive thing you can get wrong, especially over multiple hires and scaling a team.
So now you're sitting on data from thousands of businesses with Franzy, franchise businesses. And the franchises, as I understand it, they survive at about 85% over 5 years, with the others are about 50% for independent businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah, so franchise businesses, because there's a parent behind them or a franchisor and a peer group of all this other learning from the franchisee in this country or this state, everyone's sharing their best practices, because you're not competing in each other's territory. You want to see the brand overall win. So they're very willing to share lessons they've learned. So I think franchisees are more successful because there's a proven system. There's a peer group of all this learning about what to do, what not to do, what we just talked about earlier, reaching out to others that have done it. And then you just get like the mass, what's the word I'm looking for? The economies of scale of a large franchise system that you wouldn't as an independent. So you have these huge positives. The cons are, or the negatives are, you have to pay a royalty, and you have to pay, there's a cost to having access to these 3 great things, but the value outweighs the cost in most cases. Versus an independent, business, you're kind of on your own. There's peer groups you can try to get plugged into, like YPO or some of these mastermind groups, but the bulk purchasing power of a franchise doesn't exist. The bulk purchasing of ads doesn't exist. All the economies of scale just isn't there the same way for an independent business. So independent businesses typically have a higher failure rate than franchise businesses.
So an independent business, as you say, could join a business network, pay a fee and get some encouragement or wisdom, but because the franchise is totally focused on that brand, it's just laser sharp. Everything you get is incredibly relevant to what you're doing. So just super.
It's 1-to-1. Yeah, it's basically 1-to-1.
Right. So with the businesses that survive and then the ones that don't, what's the boring, repeatable thing that the survivors are doing? that the ones who fail aren't doing?
Yeah, I think they don't try to break what's not broken, and so they're not coming in trying to test all these things. They're very good at following the playbook of what works. We know this pricing works. We know this hiring and onboarding and training program works. It maintains the retention you need and the quality of individual that you need. So the ones that I think are successful, they're very good at following the steps and following the playbooks, versus the ones that kind of go rogue and try to get too cute or innovative. And this is at least in a franchise system specifically. For entrepreneurship in general, I think a lot of things happen. You get the wrong timing in the market. You don't listen to the customer. I see that happen a lot. People, as you can imagine, most entrepreneurs are a bit arrogant, right? You have to have an ego to think that I'm going to be in the 10% that succeeds and I'm not going to be in the 90% that fails. I mean, if you knew you were going to be in the 90% that failed, you'd never start. So everyone starting thinks they're special, right? They all think they're going to be in the 10%. And that's okay. I think you have to have a little bit of a positive ego in the sense of taking the risk to do this to begin with. Where it becomes a negative ego is once you're in that group and you think, oh yeah, all these customers are telling me that this is their problem, but they're all wrong. They don't know better. I'm going to build it this way because that was my vision and my dream. And you get stubborn on how you build the thing versus listening to the people that are actually going to use the thing, and then taking that feedback and changing your direction and changing your vision based on new information. So many people have a hard time taking new information and saying, oh, I got that wrong, or my initial hypothesis was wrong. I'm going to adjust now. And so I see a lot of people fail just from pure stubbornness and not listening to their customers and the market.
It's too true. I think there'll be a lot of listeners sort of hanging their heads at the moment, listening to this. Damn it, I feel seen. Just a few quick questions to wrap up. The one marketing tactic that you would bet on, knowing what you know now, with a zero budget?
With a zero budget, let me think. I think just getting in front of your customer again, whether that's webinars or in-person events or just showing up, especially early on. You need to talk to those early niche customers, those early adopters. And I found the best way to do that is get them on a one-on-one phone call or one-on-one conversation or, in person. In any way that you can replicate that, I think is fantastic. I mean, content as well is a good way to do that. You build a relationship and eventually you have some of those conversations, or the opportunity to have some of those conversations.
What's one shiny thing that you see people chasing right now that you think they shouldn't in business?
One shiny thing. I think AI for AI's sake. Some people just feel like, oh, I have to AI everything. And, I think sometimes people are overcomplicating things that are still pretty simple and don't need to be automated or workflowed to death. And I think a lot of people are scared of that change and feel like they need to be doing all this AI stuff. And I think you definitely have to be learning it and adopting it. But some people, I think, are it's overkill at times, and you spend a lot of time building something and then unbuilding it or changing it just for this task that you never really needed it to begin with.
Good point. Do I really need this? That's right. What's one tool that you use every single day?
Yeah. So speaking of AI, I use Chat and Claude every day just for, speed of certain tasks. I use Fixer. I like a lot. It's an AI note taker, but it also drafts emails, on your behalf, but it takes the context of all your prior emails, all of your meeting notes, your Google Drive. You can connect it to all these things so that it has the context to make your response as helpful and relevant as possible. And email used to just bog me down. It still does, but this has at least helped me speed some of that kind of day-to-day passing of information and responding to individuals with questions or useful insights much quicker than I used to.
That's the safe way to do it. I just moved all my agents right into my machine, so they've got everything. I just live dangerously. It's working out really well, but yeah, Fixer sounds much safer. So finish this. The best time to start is?
Now.
Oh, still is evergreen. If you had to land your first 10 customers this week with no budget, I guess you'd just get on the phone. Yeah.
I would just get in the on the phone out in public. I'd go to where they are. I'd show up in their business, and just as long as I can get 10 people to talk to me, I'm going to close some of them, or at the very least, I'm going to learn a lot. And both are valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people listening, I have loved hearing about Alex just doing, the cockroach mode, the start up with nothing, the be resilient. But also, Alex obviously runs Franzy, which is a very successful franchise marketplace. So if you're interested in looking at that, Alex, where should they find you?
Yeah, so you can head, it's kind of like Zillow for buying and selling a franchise. The website's www.franzy.com. And then I produce a ton of content myself. So I'm Alex from Franzy on X or Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. It's Alex Smereczniak on LinkedIn. And then we have a podcast called The Exit Plan, where we interview folks that have exited their corporate careers and have now bought and sold several, dozens of businesses and are entrepreneurs, all the way up to other entrepreneurs that have exited their business and how they went about that process as well. So really covering the whole life cycle and journey of an entrepreneur on that podcast and in that content.
I think there would be some rich lessons in there. So everybody go subscribe to Alex. It's great. Okay. Thank you so much, Alex, for your time. I've actually been very inspired and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.